G'day, welcome to vlog number 6. Before we start, I spent last weekend in Wales on the River Dee at UK's first whitewater stand-up paddleboarding festival. Brilliant time, met some cool people, really upped my skills when it comes to running fast water on stand-up paddleboard, and I'm really keen to utilise that for some of my longer trips. We've got another one coming up in October, this time on the River Dart in Devon. If you're keen to come along, it's for all level of paddlers, from beginner to expert. If you just go onto Facebook and check out Whitewater Sup UK, join the group, and you'll keep updated on where that's headed. So that's end of October, but definitely come along, you'll have a great time. Okay, today vlog number 6. Remember I mentioned last time that we're going to chat a little bit about choosing your craft for multi-day river trips. You know, whether you're thinking of paddling a kayak, a stand-up paddleboard, a canoe, a raft, a pack raft, whatever sort of takes your fancy. For me, first and foremost, the craft that I use is a tool, so it really has to be fit for purpose, you know, and that means taking the right boat, the right board onto the right river. So after you've chosen maybe what river that you're going to paddle, or what section of a river, then you really have to look at the nature of that river. You know, is it flat water, is it white water, is it move fast, is it big volume, is it rocky, are you quite isolated or close to urban centres and things like that. So you have to factor all of that in when you're choosing your board. Earlier this year, when I went out to Australia to paddle the longest waterway there, I chose a inflatable stand-up paddleboard as a Red Paddle Co. 13-foot 2-inch Explorer Plus board. Brilliant board. I chose that for a couple of reasons. One is because I wanted to do a long trip on a stand-up paddleboard. The longest I'd done before was probably a week and a half on that same board, and it worked really well. So I thought having a go of a river that's going to take me about 3 months wouldn't be a bad test for it. So another reason that I chose it was, while looking at the type of river that the Murray-Darling was in the upper section up in Queensland there, not much water, very rocky, obviously very low volume. The water can move reasonably fast at times, but the key thing really is just not much water. When I got there, it was even worse than I thought it would be, but having the stand-up paddleboard proved key to getting past that upper section. For probably 3-4 weeks, maybe a month of that first part, there was log jams often every 50 or 100 meters, huge, you know, from massive trees that had fallen across the river, single trees, to log jams as big as a two-story house. Now when you've got these for every 50, 100 meters, having the stand-up paddleboard meant that I could paddle right up to it, haul the board over, and then jump back on the other side, keep paddling. You know, another 50 meters on, I've got a different sort of obstacle straight off, and it was still tough, but a lot easier than if I was sitting in a touring kayak and paddling up to it and having to pop out of the cockpit, drag it over, go again. So that was key, and that was really important. So that the stand-up paddleboard that I used, it was fit for purpose. Now, when I head to the Nile to do source to sea there, you know, I've really, as you can probably tell, I've been concentrating on stand-up paddleboarding a lot, but to have a crack at the upper Nile, the White Nile there on a stand-up paddleboard, is just not going to work. You could take the best whitewater guys in the world, and they're not going to be able to stick half the rapids up on that upper section there. So while it would be fun to take a stand-up paddleboard on the Nile for, say, the flat water, it's just not the right tool for the job on the upper section there. You know, you have to be in a whitewater kayak or a raft, and you know, something that's going to be able to give you the best possible chance to run those rapids. Otherwise, if you take a stand-up paddleboard, you're going to be portaging 90% of those rapids. So to me, it just seems a little bit pointless. When I paddled the Volga in 2014, I used a 17-foot touring kayak, and again, I don't know whether it was by skill or luck, but after researching the river, the Volga, and basically how big it gets because of the 9 hydroelectric dams on there, using that particular touring kayak was perfect. There were days when the river was 40-50 k's wide, and the wind and the storms would arrive, and I was surfing sideways down the face of these sort of overhead waves. I was high bracing in the waves and they're breaking over my head, but I was still able to push on a lot of the time. If I had chosen a stand-up paddleboard, for example, or open canoe, I would have had a lot more wind-bound days, and I just would not have been able to paddle as much as I did. So using that touring kayak for the Volga was perfect, On the Missouri, Mississippi, I use the same boat. If I was to go back and paddle another big river in the US, the Missouri again, the Mississippi again, maybe something in Canada, then I would really like to use a canoe, partially for romantic or nostalgic reasons. It's sort of, to me, a canoe on a big US river really resonates. So I'd definitely use a canoe if I went back there. So also important, very important, is being able to paddle the craft that you've chosen. If you're going to jump on and do a big multi-day trip, and the water's going to be quite difficult, and you've got a stand-up paddleboard or an open canoe or a touring kayak, you really have to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to spend the first few weeks sort of increasing the risk to your safety, slowing you down, getting to grips with that craft. So definitely beforehand, if you don't know how to paddle it, then take some time to sort yourself out and get an understanding of the craft that you're going to use. And as I mentioned as well, you really need to enjoy the boat, the board that you're going to paddle. You're going to be on river for weeks at a time, perhaps months at a time. And if you're just not really having fun paddling that sort of particular craft, then it's going to be a long multi-day river trip. So just to sort of go over, I think for me, the most important thing is that you've got the right tool for the job. Also key is that you know how to use that tool, you know how to paddle that kayak, that SUP, that raft, that pack raft, what have you. And then thirdly, that you enjoy paddling that particular thing. Once you've got those things sorted, obviously you have to factor in, load carrying, how much you're going to load. Obviously in a canoe you can carry a lot, a raft you can carry a lot. You can carry a lot on a stand-up paddleboard and a touring kayak as well, So I think that's a bit less of an issue as compared to those other three things. So that's just a couple of tips from me. Just a short overview of choosing a craft for a multi-day river trip. Tell me what you think. What goes through your mind when you're choosing what you're going to paddle when you head off on a week-long, 2-week-long, month-long trip. Next vlog, bring it on. Cheers.